Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel, and if you're just stumbling across today's video, my name is Emma. So I decided I'm going to start a new series here on my YouTube channel, and that is a blogger's guide to a city. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of different cities that I know really well, or cities that I've previously traveled to that I feel like I know pretty well, and I feel like I've got a gist of like a great guide for you guys, or like an easy week in that city that I can share with you guys. This video actually came about when I was doing an LA guide on my Instagram stories when I did one of those like Q&As, and a lot of you guys messaged me asking me to do some city guides, like full YouTube videos talking about kind of like a blogger's city guide to a specific city. So a lot of you guys said Paris, and that is what I'm going to start out with. I have so many cities in mind that I could definitely put a little travel guide together for you guys, but I wanted to start with Paris just because the summer's coming up, and I know a lot of you girls have messaged me on Instagram for Paris recommendations, and you guys have said that you're going to be traveling there soon, so I wanted to kind of get this out of the way first just because I know Paris is very popular to travel to in the upcoming months. But of course, I will definitely be doing a Vancouver guide soon, as well as an LA, because that's totally my second home, and I feel like I know it like inside out now. So, but definitely comment down below and let me know which city you want me to cover, and I will definitely put it on my list for my next upcoming video. I'm super excited about this series that I'm going to start on my channel because you guys know for work I love to travel. I'm always traveling. I feel like I'm never home, and so many of you guys ask for travel tips, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of put a blogger twist on it. So the places and the food and like the activities that I'm going to be saying are a lot of things that bloggers would do, and a lot of you guys, I'm assuming, who follow me want to do those things too, so I thought I would put together a little fun guide. So as I said before, the first city I'm going to be covering is Paris, and Paris is one of my favorite cities in the entire world. I've traveled there a few times now, and I'm completely in love with it, and I feel like I have quite a bit of knowledge to the city, and I feel like I can kind of let you guys know, or let you guys in on what I do when I'm there, and kind of like the perfect itinerary for a week in Paris. But the topics that I will be mostly covering in all of my city guides will definitely be like food, hotel, accommodation, how to get around, things to see and do, and of course shopping, and all of my favorite cities, because that's, you know, my #1 activity that I like to do on vacation. And if you see me looking at my notepad, like I said, I wrote everything down in here, so I don't want to miss anything. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is hotel, accommodation, and how to get around, that kind of thing. So if you don't know, Paris is kind of split up in arrondissements. So if you look on a Paris map, I'll pull it up here, and you guys can see that there's like a bunch of different arrondissements. So this could be different for everybody. You honestly can stay anywhere in Paris, but for me personally, I prefer to stay in the 16th arrondissement or the 7th arrondissement, and I'll explain why. So like I said, if I pull up a map here, you can see where the Eiffel Tower is, and the 16th arrondissement is actually on one side, and the 7th arrondissement is on the other side. So both of these places are about a 15-minute walk to the Eiffel Tower, not even, and they have great views of the Eiffel Tower, but you're not paying the insane price to be right next to the Eiffel Tower. So the first place I recommend to stay in, I really like to stay in, it's my #1 spot to stay in, and that is the 16th arrondissement, which is a little city or little town in within Paris, that is called Passy. So Passy is like the cutest little area. It's super safe. It has a bunch of little boutique hotels. It has some cafes that are really great. There's a lot of schools. There's a lot of families that live in this area, so you know it's really safe because there's like kids always walking around, and like high school students and all that stuff after school. So you really get to experience like the real life of a Parisian, which is kind of cool. So obviously I'll be discussing like the food and all that stuff in Passy later on when I discuss those topics, but just kind of the area in general is amazing because, like I said, it's super quaint and cute, and I really like it. There's a bunch of cafes everywhere. There's great shopping, and probably my favorite part about it is that the famous viewpoint of the Eiffel Tower is literally a 5-minute walk from Passy. So I'll insert the photo of the view I'm talking about. That is like the famous Eiffel Tower view, and you're literally walking distance from your hotel no matter where you stay in Passy, which is awesome. As well as there's another viewpoint that is not as much well known, but I really like it. But the great thing about it is that not a lot of people know about this viewpoint, so whenever I go, there's literally maybe one person or maybe 2 people. There's hardly a crowd around, which is amazing. It's in this little side street. I'll also insert it here, and that viewpoint is in Passy as well. So I really just think Passy is like the perfect spot to feel like a local, but you're still on vacation because you're like a 5-minute walk from the Eiffel Tower, the view of the Eiffel Tower, I mean. And there's cafes everywhere where you can walk, get your coffee in the morning. It's super relaxing, and it's kind of away from the touristy stuff too, which is really great. So yeah, I definitely recommend Passy. So one hotel that I really recommend in Passy is Hotel Eiffel. I recently stayed there and I absolutely loved it. It's really affordable to stay at, but it also is really, really pretty, and it has a great view of the Eiffel Tower right outside the window, and it's literally in the heart of Passy. So I really recommend Hotel Eiffel. Also, another great alternative for staying anywhere in Paris is Airbnb, and the last time I stayed in Paris, or like the time before the last time I stayed in Paris, we actually stayed in an Airbnb in Passy and we loved it. So you can be really lucky on Airbnb and find really affordable, great places, and it makes you feel like even more of a local because you're staying in like an apartment or like a little home or something. So I definitely recommend checking out Airbnb as well. Okay, and then the second area I recommend to stay in Paris is the 7th arrondissement, and I'm not actually sure what the area is called, but I just know it's the 7th arrondissement, and I really, really like this because, again, it's actually on the other side of the Eiffel Tower, but it's about the same distance. So when we stayed there, every single morning we would wake up and walk right under the Eiffel Tower. It was like the most beautiful walk every single morning, and our hotel was literally right there, so we didn't need an Uber, we didn't need to take a cab or anything. It was right there. And again, there's a bunch of shopping, there's cafes, etc. This area is definitely more touristy than Passy. Like I said, Passy is very local, but the 7th arrondissement is definitely a lot more touristy, which comes with the cafes that are a little bit more pricey, so you just have to keep a watch out for that. But other than that, it's totally great. So two hotels that I recommend staying at in the 7th arrondissement is the Hotel EIFFEL TURENNE and Hotel La Comtesse. Both of these places I stayed at, they're both pretty reasonable. Hotel La Comtesse is a little bit more on the pricier side because you're gonna get a beautiful view, which I'll insert right here. The view was unbelievable. I woke up every morning in a dream because it was amazing to just drink my morning coffee on my little balcony with the beautiful view of the Eiffel Tower. So you're definitely gonna pay a little bit more for that. But other than that, these hotels are amazing. They're actually right across the street from each other. So if you're wanting to go in that area, you could definitely check both of them out or stay at both of them because Hotel EIFFEL TURENNE is a little bit on the cheaper side, but still super nice. And again, I always recommend Airbnb. If you're not wanting to spend a little bit more money for the hotel experience, you can totally find a bunch of Airbnbs in that area as well, because I definitely took a look and there was some great options. So yeah, those are the two places that I recommend staying in Paris. But again, that's just from my perspective. People might have other perspectives, other experiences, so they might recommend other places, and I'm sure those are just as good. But from my experience, I definitely recommend those two. So for getting around, I definitely recommend Ubering or the metro. Ubering is, again, a lot more expensive, but you do get around a little bit more luxuriously, I would say. But the metro is super affordable and you can get around a lot faster if there's traffic, and it's a great transit system. But if you guys are willing to do the transit system and willing to kind of figure that out, it's super affordable and they're so helpful. There's always some people there to kind of help you out with directions and stuff, so I definitely recommend the metro if you're on a budget. Okay, so now on to things to see and do. The first thing on my list is obviously the Eiffel Tower, and the Eiffel Tower is so beautiful. It's like the ultimate Paris activity. You have to do it when you're there. I really recommend going up, but again, if you're on a budget and you're backpacking Europe or whatever and you're not wanting to spend the money, you can always go underneath for a picnic, or you can go underneath at nighttime and watch the lights go on. I think they start when the sun goes down. Every hour for 5 minutes the lights glisten on the Eiffel Tower, which is so beautiful, and I definitely recommend it to experience that. But if you do want to pay to go up, you can pay a small fee and then you can go up the Eiffel Tower. You can go all the way to the top, or you can go to the middle, whatever you're comfortable with. I personally can only get to the 2nd level because I'm terrified of heights, but if you're willing to go up, I do recommend it. I think that you'll regret it if you don't, because the view is just unreal. You literally get to see a 360 view of the city of Paris. I also really recommend spending an afternoon, go to the grocery store and get a bunch of like cheese, meats, and bread and all that baguette deliciousness, and make yourself a little picnic underneath the Eiffel Tower. If you're going with your boo, it's super romantic. If you're going with girlfriends, super fun activity, and you can definitely snap some really cute pics. Okay, so the next thing that I recommend you guys do is the Arc de Triomphe, and this is actually along the Champs-Élysées, which is a very famous street in Paris, and the street kind of leads up to the Arc de Triomphe. I personally love the Arc de Triomphe. I think it's so beautiful. I love capturing photos in front of it. There's always like crepe stands around it. There's a bunch of shopping all the way down Champs-Élysées, so it's a great place to just kind of spend the afternoon, and obviously get some great shots of yourself in front of the Arc de Triomphe. It's beautiful. But yeah, you can definitely spend the afternoon there. There's cafes, restaurants everywhere, great shopping, and like I said, there's always crepe stands around with like beautiful Nutella crepes. that you just can't miss. So definitely check those out too. Okay, and then the next thing I think you should do is actually take a bateau mouche along the Seine. So for this, you have to buy a ticket right near the water. If you're looking at the Eiffel Tower, you can kind of go down the steps under the bridge, and there's a bunch of little stands that'll say like bateau mouche and like cruises and all that kind of stuff. I think it's about 15 euros a person. So what it is, it's a boat ride that takes you along the entire Seine and back, and they pretty much tell you all the history about Paris and all the history about the buildings that you're going to float by, which is so amazing. I love doing it. I think it's honestly so educational, and I learned so much. Every time I go on it, I feel like I learned something new. And of course, you get to see Paris from a different perspective, from the Seine, which is super pretty. So yeah, I really recommend doing this activity. It's about an hour long, so you can do it in the afternoon and then just kind of go to the Eiffel Tower after. You're in the same area, so it all works out to be, you know, one big activity. And one thing I would say is that I would recommend going around sunset, because at the end of the boat ride, if you're hitting the right time, if the sun just set, the Eiffel Tower lights will sparkle when you're finishing your boat ride. And we experienced that 2 years ago, and it was the most magical experience ever, you guys. We were all like freaking out because we didn't even know it was gonna happen, and it was like the best surprise. So I definitely recommend getting that time slot if you can, but if not, all of them are great. Okay, and then the next two places you should definitely visit on a rainy day, if you do have rainy day, go to the Musée d'Orsay and the Louvre, which are two museums in Paris that are super famous, and I'm sure you've heard of them before. But yeah, I definitely recommend those two museums in Paris because those are my two favorite. I think they're the most beautiful, and you can literally just get lost in them. But I would definitely recommend, if you have like a rainy day, to plan on going that day, just because you can avoid the rain, because it's all obviously indoors. And girl, you definitely have to see the Mona Lisa. If you're in Paris, you gotta see the Mona Lisa. Okay, and then another museum that I would recommend actually on a sunny day would be Versailles. And this is actually a huge palace about an hour outside of Paris. Depending on your budget, you can train out to Versailles, or you can take an Uber, which I think was around like 45 euros. So it can get pretty pricey if you're on a budget, just warning you. But Versailles, you can spend the entire day there, you guys. Every time I go to Paris, Versailles has been my favorite day. It is so beautiful. The gardens are amazing. It's actually free entry into the gardens, but into the actual like palace, you do have to pay a fee, but it's totally worth it. And I really recommend to get there between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. to kind of beat the rush. But I honestly, you guys, recommend it so much. Since it's not actually in Paris, a lot of people kind of skip out on it, which I really recommend to go. If there's one thing you're gonna do, definitely do Versailles, because it is the most beautiful palace. So yeah, I would really recommend to spend the entire day out there, kind of cut out a full day for Versailles, because it's huge and you want to kind of soak it all in. Okay, and then the next place I recommend going is Montmartre. And pretty much what Montmartre is a huge viewpoint of Paris. Probably one of the best views in Paris, to be honest with you. It has a huge church at the top, and it has a little town called Montmartre, obviously. And I'll insert photos here of what I'm talking about, but it has a really, really pretty view of like the city of Paris. You can see the Eiffel Tower in the distance. It's beautiful. There's always musicians playing up there, beautiful Parisian music. It is just such a vibe, you guys. You need to go. Obviously the church is beautiful. You can kind of explore the church as well. And then if you go into the little actual town, there's a bunch of restaurants, cafes. So within the restaurants and the cafes, it's actually an artist square, which is a bunch of Parisian painters and artists. They kind of gather in this little square and just do their art, and it's the most amazing thing to watch. So you can pretty much grab a glass of wine or grab a coffee and watch them while you eat your food or while you have your coffee. It's like the coolest thing ever. And if you're into that kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend it. It's really, really great. Okay, and then the next spot I would recommend going to is Avenue Montaigne, which is known to be a very luxurious street in Paris. It has all the designer stores you can think about. They have Chanel, they have Balenciaga, Versace, Dior, all of it. So I pretty much go there to, you know, just dream. But it's honestly such a beautiful area just to kind of walk the streets and window shop, or maybe make your first designer purchase in Paris, which would be super cool, because where else would you want to buy a Chanel? Obviously Paris. But obviously if you just want to window shop, you can totally do that and just kind of window shop all the beautiful designer stores. And there also is a bunch of different restaurants and cafes around too. So yeah, it's just kind of like a fun afternoon or a fun morning. You don't need the whole day to spend there. And if you appreciate designer pieces, I just think it's a really fun afternoon to spend, just kind of shop around all the designer stores. It's so fun. So another thing to do in Paris, if you're on the trip with your boyfriend or girlfriend or partner, is the Louvre Bridge. And I really recommend it if you're going on a trip, even with your girlfriends. Honestly, it's just such a fun concept. So pretty much what it is, it's a huge bridge full of locks. So you can go buy a lock at one of the little stands near the bridge, and then you can lock it up and throw away the key into the river, which is such a cute concept. And you make a wish, or you can make a promise, or you can, you know, get proposed to. But like I said, it's just a kind of a fun little activity to do. It's really special because your lock will literally stay there forever, hopefully. And next time you go back to Paris, you can find your little lock on the bridge. So that's another really fun activity that I definitely recommend doing. Okay, and then the last place I recommend going is Notre Dame. And of course, the saddest news just came out where Notre Dame actually caught on fire, which broke my heart and my mom's heart too. It's her favorite place ever. But I still wanted to put it on here just because it holds so much history, and I think that you guys should still go check it out. I've actually been there a few times, and every single time I go and light a candle in there. So it honestly is such a special place, and I'm so heartbroken to what happened to it. But again, I still wanted to add it on here because I really think that you guys should go admire its beauty and see what it's all about. Also, around Notre Dame, there are a bunch of different cafes where you can explore, and there's a bunch of beautiful streets. Honestly, everywhere in Paris you can just walk around for hours because everything is beautiful. So even if Notre Dame's under construction now, you should definitely check out the area because it's super beautiful. Okay, so now on to food and coffee shops. So obviously there are thousands and thousands of coffee shops in Paris, so it'd be hard for me to explain all of them that I've been to, but I kind of wanted to talk about a few of the coffee shops that I love and a few of the restaurants that I've tried out and that I really love as well. So the first one I wanted to talk about is actually a cafe right next to the Eiffel Tower, and it's called Castel Cafe, or Le Castel Cafe. It's actually my mom's favorite cafe, so every time we go to get a little coffee or to go get some food. So this cafe is one of my favorites because it has great food, obviously, but it's in a super great location. It's literally a street away from the Eiffel Tower, and in the alleyway that the cafe is kind of located, it has like the most beautiful viewpoint of the Eiffel Tower. It's super famous. I'll insert a photo here of one of the photos that I've taken there, so you guys will know where I'm talking about when you see this photo, but that is the cafe that's right next to it, so that is the name of it. So two other cafes that I really like are actually in Passy, the place that I was mentioning earlier in the video. One of them is called Franklin's, and it has purple chairs. You can't miss it. We called it the Purple Chair Cafe for so long. We didn't know the name, but then we found out the name is Franklin's, so definitely check them out. They have petit déjeuner, which is, I believe it's a croissant, a baguette, a coffee, and an orange juice for I think $8 or €8, which is really great for Paris prices, so that is really good. There's also one across the street called Le Passy, and it's about the same deal, so definitely check those out if you decide to stay in Passy. So in Montmartre, the place that I was talking about earlier with the artist square that I was talking about, one of the restaurants in there that I really recommend going to is called La Mère Catherine. It has really, really good crepes, raspberry crepes. If you're into crepes, definitely check them out, and they have really good coffee as well, obviously. And then right across the way there is a pizza joint, which is... So another restaurant I really recommend going to is Pink Mama, and this one I actually got recommended every single time I went to Paris. Everyone was like, you have to go to Pink Mama. So I finally did, and I've been twice now, and it is so good. It's a little bit more on the expensive side, so if you're on a budget, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's really, really great if you're wanting to splurge on a little meal. It's really, really cool. It's a restaurant that has like a bunch of different floors, and there's like a secret bar underneath, and there's a bunch of different floors with all the different vibes. It's really cool. I'll have the name here so you guys can do your own research, but I definitely recommend it. Another restaurant is Marcello's, and it's an Italian restaurant I actually discovered with Nitz and Sophie when we went to Paris 2 years ago, and we loved it, and we ate there like 8 times. So when I went back with Steven earlier this year, I took him like 5 times because we were obsessed with it. And I know a lot of you have been because of us, because a lot of you guys tag me in your stories and say that you got to try out Marcello's, so I'm really happy about that. So I thought that was really cute. Another cafe is Angelina Paris, which is located right next to the Louvre, and it is a beautiful new cafe. Actually, I think it's pretty recently opened, but it's beautiful, and they have beautiful high tea, petit déjeuners as well, and I think it's just like such an aesthetic place. So if you're wanting to take some pics for the gram, it's definitely the place. I'll insert the photos which I took in Angelina's. So another restaurant that I recommend going to is called L'Avenue, and it's actually on Avenue Montaigne, the kind of luxury street that I was talking about earlier, and it is a very expensive restaurant. However, it is delicious, and it is a beautiful photo op, so I would definitely check out that restaurant if you're not on a budget and you're wanting to, again, splurge on a meal and kind of have a fun afternoon out or a night out. I definitely recommend it if you're going to that area anyways. You should definitely check out that restaurant for that afternoon. So those are kind of my top food and cafe recommendations. Obviously there are so many more, but I didn't want to make this video too long, so I'll try to list everything down in the description, and I'll add a few more that I'm obsessed with, so you guys can have some more options. Okay, and then the last topic I wanted to cover is obviously shopping, because girl, we love shopping. shopping. All of us here, if you're watching this, you obviously love shopping too, just as much as I do. So the first area for great shopping is the Champs-Élysées, which I mentioned earlier is the big long street that's leading up to the Arc de Triomphe. So that whole street is shopping. You can literally get anything there from Zara to designer pieces. So it's kind of that like high and low shopping, which obviously is the best way to shop. So I would definitely recommend Champs-Élysées. You can do that while you're taking your pics at Arc de Triomphe. And then the next place I recommend is called Le Marais, which is in the 3rd and 4th arrondissement. And again, it's just like an area to shop. There's a lot of vintage shops too, which is great, but you can also get that high and low of shopping. And then the next spot I really love shopping is actually not necessarily like a mall or like a shopping area, but if you've been to Paris, or if you are in Paris, you're gonna notice along the Seine there are a bunch of little markets and little stands where mostly Parisians sell like vintage pieces and vintage books and vintage magazines and posters, and it's very cool, and like you can collect a lot of really cool vintage Parisian stuff there. So I always check them out whenever I'm on the Seine. I usually pick up like a vintage Dior magazine or something like that. So if you're like me and like to collect little things from your trips, if you're wanting something very Parisian, definitely check all those stands out along the Seine. It's right next to the Louvre Bridge. So if you're gonna do the Louvre Bridge, definitely check out all the stands because I know there's a bunch right next to that bridge. And I would definitely check that out. So again, L'Avenue Montaigne for shopping is great. I wanted to just kind of reiterate it because I've talked about it a few times now, but the shopping again is great if you're wanting to pick out something designer, if you're wanting to do some more high-end shopping. L'Avenue Montaigne is like the perfect area. So actually a really great vintage store that I discovered last time I was in Paris, it's called Kilo Shop, and apparently it's very popular in Europe. I've actually never heard of it previously to this trip, but once I was there, everyone's like, you've never heard of Kilo Shop? So I guess maybe I was, you know, in the dark, or it's very European, but it's pretty much a vintage store that they measure everything in kilos, so you can literally pick like a huge thing of clothes and they measure it for the price, which is a really cool concept, and they had really cool vintage pieces, so I definitely recommend checking out Kilo Shop. So another great area to shop in is Passy, the place that I was telling you about that I love staying in. They actually have really great things like Zara, Brandy Melville, all that kind of shopping, and they do have some vintage designer stores as well. And they also have my favorite vintage shop in Paris in Passy, in that area that I'm talking about, and they are called Depot Von Luxe Passy. I actually got my first ever Dior bag from there, and I also got these vintage Chanel earrings that I wear all the time. I got both of these pieces from that vintage store, and I've talked about them on Instagram a bunch because I'm so obsessed with them. They have like the best designer pieces, vintage designer pieces obviously, and I know a lot of you guys have actually gone since I kind of talked about them, and some of you guys have purchased things, which makes me so happy because I love helping a girl out with some shopping. Yeah, I'll put their Instagram handle here so you guys can check them out and see exactly where they're located, but I definitely recommend checking them out. Okay, so that concludes my little blogger's guide to Paris. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I didn't miss anything and I covered everything I wanted to cover, but again, this is just my perspective on Paris and kind of my experience in Paris, and the things that I recommend. Also keep in mind this was kind of like a blogger's guide, so everywhere you're gonna go, there are definitely gonna be some photo ops to take for the gram, and experience some really fun things. And hopefully for you guys that are traveling to Paris this summer or this spring, I hope you guys get some inspiration and some helpful tips while you're in Paris. And if you've been to Paris and have other recommendations, definitely leave them in the comments so everyone can see it and take note. So yeah, Paris is definitely one of my favorite cities in the entire world, and I'm so glad that I got to do a little blogger's guide to Paris, and I'm really excited to continue this series on my channel. Let me know in the comments which city you would like for me to cover next. I definitely will take note of all of them and try to do all of them. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!